Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome to the podcast this week. I am talking to Hal Rosenfeld, who is a incredible drummer who's made his way into the LA film scene in the past decade or so. He's played on massive, huge blockbuster films, and is also a composer and working his way deep into the composing world in LA. Pretty astounding, talented guy. Really amazing with sonics, the way he thinks about things. This conversation with him was really enlightening to me. Just someone that comes from a different world than I do, but we, thinking similarly. It's surprising how much work he does out of his home studio for these major Hollywood films. And he also plays on pop records. He can also go to a stadium and just bash, with the best of them. If you see any of that stuff on Hal's Instagram, he's just an incredible musician. So really cool conversation, really cool guy. Of course, I have my drum coaching recording classes going. If you're a home studio drummer and you need to get your sounds better, if you need to get your workflow better, need to understand EQ, compression, the whole world that goes into it. I'm coaching that. I've been doing that a long time, 25 years, and I found a way to teach it. So if you're looking for that kind of help, hit me up, and you can go to blairsinta.com and get some more information. All right, enjoy Hal.
I know it's like more than 80% of the job we do is actually like an IT job.
Yeah, right.
All right, cool, great. This looks good. I'm gonna record. I'm recording. Boom. All right, cool. I'm gonna clap.
Now it's
That way you've got it.
there we go.
That's official.
Right on. Um,
Yeah.
well, cool. So I don't know if you've listened to this before, but I don't spend a whole lot of time on people's backgrounds. I'm not really interested
Yeah.
in it too much, but I don't know a lot about you, so I'm curious where obviously your percussive background and your composing background came from, and then how you got into like where you're at.
Yeah. Totally. Man, first of all, thanks so much for having me on. Like I have listened to a few episodes and I love what you do, like both professionally and with this. Like
Thank
I
you.
love how you get a hold of like some like legends and talk about like the nitty gritty and it's like I don't know, there aren't too many outlets who are doing that, especially outside of drumming, but in like the recording and just like everyone's like kind of careers. And there's so many drumming podcasts, but not like I don't know. It's a it's a very cool thing you do, and I've been a fan of yours for a while, and
Thank you, man.
yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, so I'm from Miami originally, and I grew up in a suburb of Miami called Boca Raton. I call it God's waiting room. It's like old Jewish people. It's
I've
like
been to Boca.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
cool. It's suburban. Like I've come to appreciate it more now that I've gone than when I was growing up there. But basically, I grew up. My parents were so vehemently against me playing drums. I understand. Like my parents bought me like every instrument known to man that they knew when they figured out I was somewhat musical. Like they bought me like a saxophone, a guitar, a theremin. Like please play anything but the drums. But finally, my mom really wanted me to go to this like performing arts middle school, and so I begged and begged and begged and begged for a drum lesson, and finally I had a drum lesson, and it went over pretty well. I just wanted to play like punk rock, really. I wanted to play like loud and fast, like Travis Barker. But when I got to the school, it was all orchestra and jazz. And so I had to like learn notes and learn how to play like major minor scales and marimba, and I hated it. I hated all of it. Hated that it sort of took the fun out for me of just like playing music. It was like all of a sudden it was like academic and you had to like learn stuff. But that became kind of like my greatest asset. I mean, the program, like the middle school and the high schools that I went to were just incredible music programs that were really like hardcore, like definitely like Whiplash style sort of programs. And so we were playing some, I was in orchestra and I was in jazz band and I did like youth orchestra stuff and we were in like, we were playing some like really heavy repertoire for all those groups, especially at the middle school level. And so because of that, I got really immersed in like Tchaikovsky and Ravel and Stravinsky and like a lot of these types of, styles of orchestration and orchestral music. But at the same time, we were playing like Gordon Goodwin charts and like Count Basie charts in big band. And then I was also had my own like rock band projects on the side. I get outside with friends and stuff. And so I was just from a really young age as a musician, immersed in all styles. Like I didn't just like, grow up playing in bands and then kind of figured it out later. I just kind of from the age of like 10, I was like listening to orchestral rep and whatnot. And then, my dad's a mechanic, and so I grew up building stuff with him, and I've always been really interested in how things are built and how things are constructed. And I just kind of in orchestra, I started to realize we'd be playing, you know, pieces by like Ravel and like Tchaikovsky and various like Rimsky-Korsakov and stuff, and like I realized that like it was the same players playing those pieces of music, but it all three of those pieces would sound entirely different, and then I started to kind of just without knowing what orchestration was at that age, I started to become really interested in why do the pieces sound so different with the same people, and I started kind of getting a hold of just like sheet music scores, and I didn't know what any of it meant, but I've always been a very curious person, especially when I was a kid. I had the time to be more curious now than I am now, but I would like look up like what does consordino mean? Oh, with a mute. What is with a mute? Like what? And then I would start to understand sort of orchestration without knowing it was orchestration. And as percussionists, like like especially like percussion repertoire, percussion ensemble stuff, you're learning about colors and textures with like different mallets and like different sticks and like different techniques. And I just kind of started to develop an ear and a knack for like different sounds, like xylophone with rubber mallets versus plastic mallets, and because a lot of like marching band and percussion ensemble is very relied on like those kinds of skill sets of like composers compose with color with percussion ensemble stuff. So I just started to like then venture into like composing through my love of improvising, like being in jazz band and stuff, and then just like, oh, I can make my own songs by just messing around. And that was about in high school. I started to kind of compose things. I kind of came to the using computers of it all pretty late in the game. Like the compressors and reverbs. I don't really know what any of that stuff was when I came to LA. But yeah, and so kind of all of that mixed together, I've always had like a scatterbrain and lots of interests, and I've kind of when I accidentally moved to LA more, I wasn't really supposed to come here to live here, but it kind of ended up that way. I was like 19. I just kind of pursued as much as I could with that because knowing that nothing would really work. Like I didn't really know what would stick, and I know how fleeting everything here is in LA, how easily things are taken away and given. I just kind of like had a bunch of oddball jobs, and I was sort of as always been pursuing like a musician career, like a drumming and percussion career, but at the same time a composing career. At the same time, I kind of was using orchestration to like, make money and meet people and just kind of get under the hood of other composers' work and meet other people that way, and then various things and under those umbrellas of like music, sheet music engraving. And I was like, I sort of moved out here to work for this jazz composer Gordon Goodwin, but by proxy, Bernie Dressel was like a big mentor to me and the reason I moved to LA. And so I was like his drum tech for a while, going to all of his gigs, setting up his stuff, and sort of then I started working for composers as like an assistant. And so I sort of had a little bit of work in all these different places, and I'm still like just kind of jumping back and forth and like kind of just sort of I love variety. So yeah, that's a very long-winded answer, but that's yeah, it's kind of through all that stuff is where I kind of became interested in all these random things that I sort of still do.
Mhm. So when you were like kind of early discovery of arranging and things like that, were you doing things on a laptop or like how were you expressing that?
Yeah, well, it's funny, like I grew up in this weird time where like YouTube was like just starting to like become a thing, and like, I didn't really have a laptop growing up. I had like a desktop iMac that like, lived in my parents' living room basically. And so I was definitely always like a pencil and paper guy. Like I was like lucky to grow up in music education programs that had libraries of music. So like I just would just ask my teachers if I could just like look at something, and then I would like listen to it and look at it, and just that way I could I'm a very visual person, so I could like see what's happening, what I'm hearing versus what I'm seeing. But then when I started to actually compose and arrange, I got started in Finale first, just like putting notes on a page and seeing what it sounds like. And then when it came to like sequencing things, like a friend of mine in like high school, early high school, gave me like a bootleg copy of like Reason, and I was just like, with the I knew nothing about synths or reverbs or compressors or anything. I just knew sound. It was very much like an ear and music theory person. But then when I moved to LA, obviously I did a year of college in Florida at Florida State University, which is like a conservatory style program, like pursuing orchestral percussion and classical percussion. I sort of always would rather study classical percussion pedagogy over like jazz. It's like you can either swing or you can't, in my opinion. Um, and um, and then I started to kind of get more into composing and didn't know what film scoring really was, but wanted to do whatever that was. And then I started to get into like Logic and using like the onboard samples. But it wasn't really till I started kind of getting on the job here working for other composers that I learned about like the nuances of like programming and mock-ups and samples and kind of I've just been faking it till I make it, I guess. I've been like just kind of YouTube is such a great source. I'm so glad that like grown up in an age where I have that. It's like, I've learned more on YouTube and just like on the job than like in school.
Mhm.
But then like, through then becoming like, until then becoming like, into like arranging and like big band stuff, I would, I would do, I'm not all Sibelius all the way, but yeah, just like I've been a visual learner. I've always looked at things and learned from the people, and I have like a mentor, a guy named Lad McIntosh, who I met when I was first starting out here, who's like I've kind of took me under his wing in terms of orchestration. He's also like a big band like legendary guy, and so it's been like a lot of I don't know. I've learned all different ways by doing and by teaching and by I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So you came to LA pursuing a composing arranging career over a drumming career.
I came to LA just do wanting to do anything. I knew drumming was what I knew. I definitely knew drumming was what I knew and what I had. But I knew that it like everything else wasn't stable enough, I guess. But I was just kind of just throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and seeing what would stick. And that's kind of still how I feel. Like, I might not compose for the rest of my life and I might just drum full time or I might want to not drum as much and if I become busier with if I feel more creatively fulfilled doing this. I don't know. I'm very much like a wing it person. So I moved to LA for a summer. Like I moved to LA because Gordon Goodwin had offered me like an assistant position, like just like working for him, which was like he's like one of my idols growing up, and it was like crazy. And so then, because it wasn't like a full-time thing, I had um I had like gotten myself an internship at like a sheet music engraving company that do all the sheet music for like film stuff just to learn about that because I liked the engraving process. And then like Gordon set me up with a job at his musician contractor's office. I was like the tech guy backing up hard drives at a contractor office for a little bit. I just was just like whatever. I didn't know. I was so young and I was like willing to do anything. And I was just like game to just meet people. But drumming is how I just kind of started making money. And it is what I naturally love. Like I'll always love drumming.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter, but do you
Yeah.
consider yourself a drummer? I mean, more of a composer or more of a drummer at this point? You know what I mean?
God, that's the impossible question.
That's
That's the
maybe that's a
question.
dumb question. Maybe because it
No,
really
it's
matters.
not,
You know what I mean?
no, it's not dumb at all. I think like drum I'd say composing and producing are what I've had to work harder at. Like I think everyone has like a natural something that they either discover or they don't. And drumming is that thing for me. Drumming's the thing that I have to like work least at to be serviceable. Like I'm not trying to be like super choppy. That's not what I get asked to do, and so I don't have to work on that as much. But I'm actively like I think when I'm wanting to like shed on something, it's some kind of new production technique, you know, um, or I'm like, yeah, working out some kind of composing thing. Like that's what I feel like I have to like hone in on more. Like I spent, I was working as a composer assistant for a bunch of different composers for a long time. But I was writing music every day for like I think one time one sort of stint I wrote at least 4 bars of music every day for like 3 years. And then I really felt like that I had got somewhere. But like drumming, I don't feel like I want to play drums every day to like get better at it, but I know that that's I can just like I guess I sort of gauge it actually as if I'm sick and in poor health, what would I rather be doing? It's probably drumming. Like I'd rather show up to a show with like the flu and than compose with the flu. I just like I just
Yeah.
yeah. But I don't know. I've never been able to put myself in a box. It's my greatest strength and weakness. Like whenever I take any kind of professional meeting with like an executive or director or producer or like even like when I was looking for agents at the time, it's like, well, who are you? And it's like, I don't know. I can do all these different things. Like I've kind of put myself through the paces with like everything, and so it's tough. I don't know. I would consider myself both, like just an overall creative.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. How about you though? Like where are you from, Blair? I want to know. I know this is you're interviewing me, but I want to know about you though.
I'll make this really brief.
Yeah,
I grew
yeah,
up
yeah,
in
yeah.
Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan,
Oh, cool.
and I was smiling when you were telling me about your early years because I had the exact same thing. My parents, my dad's a classical saxophonist. My mom was a um, public school music teacher.
No way.
I was like, I want to be a drummer. They were like, please, anything but that.
Yeah.
So I played saxophone for a year and I played piano, and eventually I was doing both. And eventually and then they were like, okay, you're going to be a drummer, but you have to play mallets. You're going to play
Yeah.
an
Wow.
So I went to
Makes sense.
uh,
Huh.
all through like my younger years, and I played.
No way.
Yeah, so
Great program there.
yeah, I played like really serious timpani, and I went to North
Wow.
Texas, and I played in the pit in the North Texas drum line.
Wow.
So those mallet chops are somewhere way back here in
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
head. You know what I mean? But like, it's interesting to hear you say certain things like about texture and mallets because I think that has informed me a lot. I think it took a long time to come out
Totally.
in my drum set playing and in my recording. But it was in there and I'm able to like think that way
Totally.
because of those things. But it almost had to come through, um, not so cerebrally, but like in musical situations where I was like, well, it doesn't sound right. What is that?
Yeah, right. Totally. And like yeah, and like whenever I'm like composing or producing something and I'm working with like synthesizers and other stuff and especially with orchestration, I'm always thinking about like complementing and layering, which in like percussion ensemble stuff is that's the name of the game. It's like you have like a glockenspiel double with some crotales or like a glockenspiel and some vibraphone or like you've got these pairings that you've kind of like learned to know and that like if I didn't have that, I would be in a very different place. Really quick aside, when you were in North Texas, did you know a professor named Dr. Shatroma?
Yeah, he was the percussion department head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He published my very first percussion ensemble piece of music when I was like 18 or something. It was so random, but he was so nice. He's so cool through his Drop Six company.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
passed a few years ago,
I
unfortunately, but
know.
he
I
ran
know.
he ran a very tough program, and at the time, anybody that was there at the time, I was very fortunate to go to school with like some of the baddest dudes that are.
Wow.
Um, but that was a tough program. Doc Shatroma, so we
Yeah.
called him Doc, and then
Yeah, yeah.
and
Yep.
yeah, man, and also a guy named Paul Rennick, who's huge in the
Yeah,
drumline world. Do you know
totally.
Paul?
I did a like a panel with him and his wife Sandy a
Okay,
little bit ago,
yes,
and then I know like the Davilas like Julian Lalo Davila and stuff. I don't know they're in that kind of circle as well.
yeah, but yeah, Paul. I used to take mallet lessons with Paul and snare drum lessons, and
Wow.
uh, it's funny. I have a couple friends where once in a while we get on this Paul Rennick kick. We're like, how did that dude have so much? He seemed so much older than us at the time, but he
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
wasn't. And we're like,
Right.
that guy have so much wisdom at that age. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean the thing is like North Texas is like always been so consistently pumping out incredible musicians, but it's one of those like really tough programs all around composing, like the jazz world, like the percussion world. I'm sure that even other departments as well, but like everyone I've always met from there just has a consistently good education and like well-rounded background of what the job we have to do entails, but also what it could entail. And a lot of programs just only focus on bop drumming and like transcribing Art Blakey solos or like, which is not useful. I just there's so much. I think there's a lot more than what a lot of programs are teaching, but that's a whole other
Yeah,
pedestal
yeah, that's
discussion.
a long road. We can go down that. Yeah, it was definitely a very kind of it was a single lane,
Totally.
but just to speak for me, because I didn't necessarily want to be a jazz drummer.
Right.
Helped me become much more musical. And then when I got to LA and I got back into playing rock music and doing what I
Right.
really wanted to do, and also
Yeah.
wanted to be a recording musician,
Right.
that background was I wouldn't have. There's no way I would be doing what I do now without that.
Right,
Not
right,
even close.
1000%. It is really important, but it's tough. Like I feel like it's tough to pick up later in life, because it is another language. Learning how to read music and learning like the language of chords and harmony and stuff. But it really just has helped shape us as musicians. But yeah,
So let's transition toward like, especially because I'm looking at behind you, like
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
how
Uh-oh.
you work with composing and recording at home.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious in like sonic choices and all. I mean, I feel like I could probably talk to you for like 9 hours right now.
No,
Like, you know what I mean?
dream.
Let's just try to
Yeah.
like, uh,
Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah.
you
So.
run with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, one thing that I really have learned a lot from composing, like I'm really lucky to have worked for some really interesting composers. Like my main kind of people who I like, sort of, I work with a lot of different people in various capacities, but my main North Star guy was a guy named Joe Trapanese who like scored Tron with Daft Punk, and he did like he does The Witcher on Netflix and a ton of other stuff. And I was with him on and off for 6 years, full time on staff, salary composer, sort of all around kind of left hand guy for like 3 years. And then I worked for like some people in Hans Zimmer's kind of camp at Remote Control Productions. I worked for a guy named Lord Balfe. I worked for Dom Lewis, and I was kind of in these various machines. And one of the best things that I learned um, at those times was like file organization and like ergonomics of things, and like especially like within studios, within like rigs. Like I was like, I'd build full composer rigs whenever we'd have to travel places and stuff. And so and like Hans Zimmer's rig is massive, and it's like that's something that you can take with you or work from the plane or something like that. But then, when I started working for Joe, like, he was really all about like portability and like, just like what made the most sense, like not having, 20 different Dell computer servers running your samples off of, which is what was the case over at Hans's um, space. And so when I started building my own setup here, it was really important to me because I was also traveling quite a bit at the time. It's really important to me to be able to open everything on my main rig here and also from like a hotel room if I have to, that whether that be plugins and samples and everything. Like I have a bunch of outboard gear and stuff here, but it's not necessary to like open things. So that's really important. But then that also translates over to like how my workflow is when I'm working in this space, like the ergonomics of it all, trying to make things somewhat streamlined. Basically, I've got probably move my computer here. I've got this these two racks of stuff that are kind of the main kind of brain, I guess, of the room. Like I've got, like Furman. This is like my headphone amp stuff audio over Ethernet. Yeah, some hard drive docks here. Um, then this is the like a Sonnet chassis for the Mac Studio that I house everything in. Got a clock here that's clocking all of the outboard gear down here. Running through two Apollos. And then this is all kind of my sort of chain down here. And the way that I kind of run things is I know you're probably gonna cringe a little bit, but I try to run from like a set it and forget it sort of method. Um,
You
on
do
the
too,
out
dude.
on the outboard side, as to get as much of a natural clean sound going in, so I can and then process more, just like in the box, because a lot of what I'm doing, especially with the film and TV side of things, is moving really fast and have to sometimes recall things later on. Like sometimes projects can go for like a year or a couple years, and it has happened where someone's like, "Hey, can you punch a few bars in this thing that I did like 6 or 7 months ago?" And with the Apollos and the onboard console software, which I have a love-hate relationship with, I'm able to recall my templates with mic preamp settings. I save a template for every session I do, and I know that I'm probably not twiddling with outboard gear knobs as much, and I've got everything pretty much processing within Pro Tools if I need to process harder. But I'm kind of fairly light with stuff. And then the other part of that, last thing I'll say is other half of what I do is percussion stuff. And so I've got this sort of percussion station here. I've got a drum station here with like a sort of sidecar keyboard, mouse, and screen that I can control everything from. And then just to the left of my station, my main sort of writing area here, I've got percussion central here, which these overhead mics here, my Sheps, double as my room mics when I'm recording drums, but then I just switch over to overheads there. And yeah, I kind of have it to where I can just walk up and just hit go and go, because people, the demand of what people want is only getting higher, and the budgets are only getting smaller, and the amount of time people want you to spend on their monumentous demands is getting lower. And so oftentimes I'm just going for like 3 hours straight, and I'll maybe get sometimes 15 cues done in 3 hours, or I'll be doing like I'll be so many, pass upon pass upon pass, and it's just how fast can I move and things sound great. Um, I wish I had more time to dial in stuff, but a lot of it is just go, 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 go.
Yeah, that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense to me. You know,
Yeah.
I don't
And
do
then
a
I've got,
lot
yeah,
of film and TV stuff, but I know that when I do, it
it's,
moves fast.
yeah, of course. I know. And like with the record stuff, which I also love, it is more about dialing in a sound and a vibe and a mood. Whereas with film stuff, it's about vibe, sound, and mood, but it's more about like coverage, because there's you could be getting through like sometimes like an album's worth of material in a day or something, and yeah, because I do both percussion and drums, you know there is just like a high expectation of like, oh yeah, you're gonna record all the percussion stuff too, right, or whatever it's like. And so it's like, okay, yeah, sure. And so then I've got a whole other room in the front of the house that's like gear storage, where I've got like everything that's not in here that I still use. I just move back and forth. It's like so much stuff.
Are you working at home mostly?
Before COVID, it was like 70-30, 70 in studios, 30% home. And now it really is pretty flip-flopped. It's like I probably do 70% of the stuff here and 30% from studios. I really try to get into the studio when I can, because, cartage companies are all need to survive. And I love being with people. I love playing with musicians. Like you get it. Like I miss playing live, and I was touring a bit. Like I music direct some artists and stuff, and I miss playing in front of people. Get recording here by myself it gets a little lonely sometimes, and kind of sort of just vibing off myself instead of off samples instead of with real musicians. But yeah, a lot of stuff from home these days.
That's surprising to me with the world that you're in.
I know. It kind of, and oftentimes I do feel like it can be faster, because also like I'm just really fast in Pro Tools. And it's, my brain just goes fast anyways, and so I'm just like punching, and it's when I get into a zone like you just know what you want, know what you need, and you're just like, and people just ultimately you're servicing other people, whether you're a composer servicing directors or producer servicing artists. We're servicing the producers and composers and stuff, and if they feel like they can get more bang for their buck at home, that's what it is, which that's like the sad truth of it.
Yeah. Um, do you, I'm just trying to figure out how, I know what I want to ask you. I'm trying to figure out how to
Yeah,
ask
yeah,
it. Do you find, so, so you have a very quick workflow, which I understand,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
really good. And sonically, like when you hear something, well, obviously what instrument to grab, you know how you want to make
right.
it, that. there's obviously a thing where you get into a real studio, quote
Right.
unquote, right, with a real engineer, quote unquote,
Yep. Yep.
right,
Yep.
where you're going for things, but sometimes I'm sure in your workflow you're like, no, 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 I need it to sound like this. Like there are certain instruments I have where I know what I'm going to do with it post process right away
Yep.
because
Totally.
it's going to sit in a I just did something for Tony Morales like
Oh, wait, no way.
a year or two ago. Yeah, and we talked about it.
Same. Yeah, yeah. I love Tony.
Yeah,
He's one of my favorite people, and I love the musicians he brings in. Yeah, I
yeah.
love that.
So in that situation, I was thinking about dialogue and I was like, okay, this has
Yep.
to be mixed below dialogue and things like that. And
Yep.
of course, if you're working in film world, most engineers are going to understand that. But sometimes I've been in album situations where I feel like I have to describe, like, hey, I'm going to grab this thing. It's going to sound kind of like shit and not the
Yeah.
right thing. But if we do
Yep.
this to it, it's going to sit in the right space.
Totally.
So my question is, there's it's like great to be around people and great to and not have
Yep.
to engineer and blah blah blah. But like, is there a preference at this point?
Uh, yeah, I mean, you're totally right. Like we've developed like the tools based on what we're doing here. And it's like you've come to use like plugins and processing as a part of your like instrument palette.
Mhm.
And I totally feel similarly. Is there a preference? I think it comes in waves. Like sometimes sometimes I get into this mood where I'm like, I wish somebody else was doing this for me. Like because I'm not a great engineer. Like I mean, well, in terms of getting sounds, I'm not the best. Like I think where I make up, where I lack in those areas, I make up in other areas outside of drumming. But like I really like want to get deeper into like how to get the best drum tones every time. And sometimes I just like working with people who that they made their entire life, they've dedicated their entire life to getting the best sounds possible and using the best mics possible and the techniques and stuff. Like my knowledge stops at a certain place. And so I like that. I like being able to work with people who just love their job and are, but sometimes I like the I like the workflow that I have going here, and I like that I can juggle sometimes more than one thing simultaneously. I can maybe in a day I can flip flop back and forth between a few different things depending on, it's like, okay, I'll get a couple things done on this and then head to that, and rather than just like being in the studio locked in for 9 hours or whatever, where
Yeah.
but I don't know. I like both of them. Like I feel like if I was going to a studio every day, that would take me away from other things, but. Um, yeah, I know it's a very Switzerland answer, but it is the truth. Like I see value in both, and I like both. Because I also like everything I have at my disposal here. Like I'm not rolling in it enough to have duplicates of everything in Cartage. I have stuff in Cartage that I don't need here that I take to studios, and then I have stuff that I use here. And these kind of drawers I've got going here. I was trying to figure out a way to replicate having anvil cases and stay organized, but like this is like three separate boom, boom, and boom that I could just grab all of them, roll them into my car, and then when I can unload them in a studio with I've got wheels, like a wheel thing. Like I basically took the casters and the wooden plank off the bottom of an anvil case, and these all fit in my car safely, and I have everything here at my disposal to studio. It's not as sturdy enough as anvil cases, but it's one of the only ways I can just show up with an organized arsenal of like my usual go-to stuff without having a whole other thing in Cartage right now.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you're getting called to do film stuff at studios without credit.
totally. Yeah. Well, no, well, no, with Cartage, but I just like no, I
Oh, the
still have
stuff
Cartage
that
at
you
studios.
want to have at home too.
Yes,
Yeah, no,
yes.
I got you. I got you. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I live and die by. I mean, Royal Cartage. I don't know if you use Royal or who you use, but Royal is like they're like the best in my opinion. I love them. But yeah, so I'm trying to take advantage of stuff I have here, but using it in a studio space as well.
Yeah.
Without, because it's like to buy all this stuff again, things that you maybe can or can't find.
Yeah,
Geez, it's like
sometimes they're one-offs, right? You find them
yes.
on the road or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you though? Like, do you? Because like, I mean, I'm curious what your split is working at home versus at studios, and what you prefer most. Because you got such a good thing dialed in there.
It's a similar answer.
Yeah.
I work 90% at home now.
Yeah.
Um, The thing that's cool about going to, a commercial studio is that again, you get to just relax. I'm just playing drums.
Yeah. Yep.
If there's a sound that you're going for, obviously I dial in sonically at, in with my sources what should
Right.
be happening, right?
Right.
Um, and discuss it with the engineer.
Yeah.
And then, there is a collaborative effort there, but it's also like hands off on my, on my side. So, I mean, it's just so much more labor intensive on this side, and I
Yep.
like that. It's fun,
Yep.
especially when you can't quite find it. Um, which, it's rare, but sometimes you're like, ah, man, it's just not quite there. What is it? And the
Yep.
experimentation of it, I love that.
Yep.
And if it's, especially in my case, if it's like a great song and I'm really excited about it, like I will go that extra mile and be like, I gotta find it. I gotta find
Totally.
out how to do this in this room. Um,
Totally.
but sometimes, there are days I'm just like, man,
Yeah.
you know, like,
It'd be great to just show up and just play drums and
yeah,
then get a coffee while someone else is
yeah. And then
is miking everything up.
people want different options on takes,
Yep.
and then you're committing different EQs and compressions, and
Yep.
and it gets very complicated, and sometimes with film and TV, that's really the organization part of sending that off is
Yep.
more nerve-wracking than anything because you want
Totally.
it to be easy for them. You don't want to screw it up
Totally.
when you're sending it to them because
Yeah. No.
they do a whole mess.
Totally. Yeah. And that's so important. A lot of the tools that I sort of picked up in the film scoring side of things, I apply to the drumming side of things, like I've got like a keyboard maestro script that names all my stems for me. That way everything is like labeled properly all the time. Yeah, yeah. It's like yeah, all that stuff is important. I'm a nerd for that stuff. I could talk about shortcuts all day, but there is a weird line though. There are people who like engineers I know who have these scripts that like set up their sessions for them. They can just like a 200 step keyboard maestro scripts. And I go, okay, what happens if you update one program?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
like, it's like, okay, come on. So there is a boundary, but I know that, copying and pasting the name into 12 or 15 different stems every time I send something leaves room for error, and it's something that I just don't want to do. And thankfully, it's really easy to automate that kind of thing. And it makes you look so much better, and it also just like it helps the process because I also know how I'd want to receive stuff if I was hiring someone as well, rather than like overhead one, you're like which piece of music is this for? Sorry, pardon my language, but
right, right.
it makes their job easier, and it makes you seem like that you care more, which you do.
Yeah, you just want to create more work because they're like,
Yes.
are we going to call that dude again? Because it turns into
Yes.
like 3 times more work.
Yes, I want someone to just take my stuff, plop it in, adjust some levels if need be, and unless they have a different sonic vision than what I've captured, I'll say, okay, next one. Because, composers have assistants that, if you're sending back, 10 different music cues and you've got drums on it and maybe like 5 or 10 passes of percussion each minimum, like the composer isn't importing all that stuff. You've got an assistant importing that stuff, and assistants sometimes, especially if they're running on no sleep, they're doing it at 3 o'clock in the morning. They can miss stuff. So if all your stems start and end at the same place, if you're even going the extra mile to like, you know, if you're recording to the time code that they've spotted at, like they can just spot your stuff in, things are labeled properly, they just drag and drop group things together and move on. Like there's less room for error. But that is the extra mile because I'm in that as well. But
I
yeah.
mean, you've been way deeper than me on that, but wait, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, when you do percussion overdubs, are you getting different ambiances? Like like if you're doing a tom overdub, are
Sure.
you getting rooms, close mics, all that? You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. Sometimes I will utilize the rooms here. I'm also starting to incorporate having like a corner of the room mic that I can just smash. Like this SM7 basically lives in a corner when it's not being used, and it kind of like, can be used really helpful in a helpful way. But I also have got like a couple different like auxiliary mics that I call them. But with like the basic percussion, like I call like the groove percussion stuff, like shakers, congos, bongos, um, any of that stuff is just the overheads. And the way that I've got it, I mean, these chefs, the MK4s, like CMC MK4s, like I mean, they could capture like flies hooking up. Like it's truly incredible, and it sounds great.
Yeah.
And so I don't really do much ambience there. But I will if it's something specialized. I'm going for like a gated reverb kind of thing, like on the toms. Then I'll capture something. But I don't go. I think where I go in the weeds more on the organizational stuff. You're certainly like I admire you for living more in the weeds on capturing different mics and getting different things going. It is pretty much I've got my stationary setup, and then if I need an extra auxiliary like trash mic or something or like a different perspective, then I'll do something. But like on congas, I just pretty much have the overheads capturing them, and that's pretty much it. Which but they're closely mic'd, but instead of close miking something that I could set up a second mic, what I will do is I will then process it. I'll sort of use mastering or a transient shaper to to sort of capture that closer sound.
The
And I'll
duplicate
blend.
the track and then
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Which is a little bit of a shortcut, but it's just quicker and more reliable for me, especially if I have to like come back to something later. I sort of just take advantage of like
Yes.
there's certain like mastering compressor plugins that I know that I can get a really great close mic sound without actually close micing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ho- so when you're I'm just thinking about like
Yeah.
sound shaping and sending off to other composers
Yeah.
and because it sounds like I mean obviously situations are different, right? But
Yes, totally.
uh man, I don't know, maybe a certain type of soundtrack
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
working on and it has to fit in a palette, right?
Yep.
Like the general right, the general palette of the sound of the composer, the film, whatever.
Yeah.
Are you often you trying to shape that stuff like post or are you like look these are good source sounds it's going to go to the engineer and those mixers those movie guys whatever you know
Totally.
what I mean
Yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah, it is actually a combination of both. A lot of what I wind up getting asked to do is to help contribute to developing a sound palette, which is cool because it's not just here's a chart, play my stuff, which I like. I like it's kind of half and half. It's like half here's a chart and some sequence percussion, play my stuff, or find something that maybe works a little better in the percussion world, but still stick to what I have or what was approved by the director or producers or the television studio per se. Um, Versus, hey, here's a piece of music. What do you think would go on here? Like there's a project I'm working on right now, actually. It's like a kids movie, like a kind of like an animated sort of thing. And I've been working on it in various iterations for quite a while now, but the composer had gotten a note from the directors and the film studio saying, "Hey, can you make this sound more fun?" More they gave a descriptor. I won't give the exact one because I'm under some kind of thing, but they'll be like, "Make this sound more like weird hamster pop music or something like that," where you're just like, "The heck does that mean?" But I go hamster pop music. Let's go.
yeah yeah
And so and the composer had some had there wasn't any drum set in there. There was like some shakers and some triangles, just like some very basic loops that were working already. But then I said, okay, it would really help the arc of this piece of music. I could see the music was going like this, and I could almost envision what was happening on screen. There'd be like some kind of build up moment, then it would go down for a minute. You feel like there's some kind of dialogue happening there, and then it would go up in sort of a different sort of key or something, some slightly different orchestration, and it comes down again. You kind of see where the action is going. And also, I will say, about 60 or 70% of the time, composers do trust me to send the video so I could watch with, and I can bounce off of that. But like in this case, I thought, it'd be really interesting to kind of go off of because like the composer was like, oh, do some like maybe some kind of like weird, like brushy things or some clicky things. And I thought musical spoons would be kind of cool here. Like I just, I have a few different pairs of like wooden musical spoons that you can get like this weird like almost like filtery sound because the spoons have like a concave at the top of them and the bottom of them. So you can get like this weird like sound while you're getting the wood. So I experimented with that, and then I experimented with like brushes on some buckets, like capturing like the resonance of the buckets that I thought blended really well with the spoons. And then I did record some light drum kit, like just like some hi-hat timekeeping and some kick drum. That then I blended in with like I just got like I keep things purposely messy here, so I can just grab and go. Like I've got these like this is really helpful, and like I've got like it's like recycled
Yeah.
like
Oh
this,
yeah.
a lot of people got those, yeah. And like, this index percussion wooden tambourine comes in so handy, especially on that thing where it's like I didn't really want like shakers, but this blended in really well with like rim clicks and blended really well with like the wooden spoons. And I keep like a ton of different like glass bottles and glass coffee mugs and stuff here because I use glass percussion all the time on stuff. So it's like it's a lot of that where I feel like this would, and I, was like, hey, I'm gonna add a vibra slap because this is obnoxious, and the composer was like, that makes it sound quirky and like dumb, like not dumb isn't the right word, but you know what I'm saying. It's like it seems out of the ordinary and unique, and so I kind of grab and go various things like that where I am helping build a sonic world. And also with film, you've got different sounds are attached to different characters. And so like a different piece of music I'd done on this project where I was using a lot of like body percussion, like snaps and like face sounds. And I was using some other, I had this like, this like smoothie, like NutriBullet thing filled with nuts and bolts that I use as like a shaker. And it was like, be careful to not go too much into that territory because that's a different character's stuff.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so
Love
a
that.
lot of sonic branding. Yeah.
Ah, cool.
Yeah. So this is very much just like, what can I grab? What's in front of me? I've got like these drawers here, like organized by
Yeah,
different
yeah.
like glass, metal, wood,
Wow.
effects. Yeah.
Are you helping decide those characters' tones?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
um, sometimes that is important. Other times it's already decided, and I'm just kind of going off of what they have. But sometimes I'll say, this character is a bit mischievous.
Yeah.
And I'll go, okay, what does that sound like? And then sometimes I'm lucky to see the actual video. So I'm working as like almost like it's the line's a little funky because of my experience as a composer myself, and as a producer, I kind of am bringing that knowledge of what would I do if I was composing this, or or what would the director want, or like I'm sort of bringing that element of things.
You have a pretty wide range of
Yeah.
influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, like, yeah, like, and I do sometimes. I'm trying not to do this as much because it, winds up being like a little too, like, where I'm getting in the weeds with like making weird sounds more so in the box. Like, on this one project, like, I'll do it if I really want to, but then you start to kind of say, well, am I composing at this point? But on the same project, like, which I really enjoyed doing, I used boom whackers and I like threw them through all sorts of crazy effects to create loops based on delays and based almost like if I was throwing things through like a modular setup. It was kind of like that, like taking the pitched sound sources of these boom whackers and like making loops out of the boom whackers that like sort of were just kind of weird and unpredictable. Yeah, I don't know. I think I get into the weeds with that stuff more than I do with like recording techniques, which I should be doing more of, and I want to learn more of. But we've all got our,
I think it's six
strengths.
of one, half dozen of another, kind of. If you
Totally.
get the source weird, then you just
Yes.
have to get the mic on it in the right place.
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, if you're changing
Yeah.
texture, I mean, you're either changing the texture on one side or on the other, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. 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 My question for you actually is, and I've wondered this from person to person, when you're recording something, how much time are you spending before you start actually playing drums to get the sound? Like, because I'm not swapping kits out. Like I kind of the kits I have set up here usually, if they're like, okay, we're going for like 60s bop, I can get that sound here without having to move stuff. But I wish I had enough space to
So
move
you'll
stuff.
tune. Is that
I'll
how you?
tune.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll tune. Yeah, yeah. How about you though? I'm really curious about that.
Um, I'm kind of the opposite, right? So I have like
Yes.
I think like 6 kits in there. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
the drop thing, I'm going there, and
Totally.
I will tune from there, but they're pretty much ready
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I I always joke that my preparation is, let's say half an hour to 45 minutes. My playing is 15 minutes, and then
Yeah.
my post work is 45 minutes to an hour.
Right. Right. Totally. Yeah. Like you're nailing the first and second take basically, and then you're focusing on the sounds going in and coming out.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's what drums am I going to use? How am I going to mic this?
Yeah.
Pretty good idea before I start of how it should sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tweak if I need to. Like so
Yeah.
today I have to do something, and the reference is like a Third Eye Blind record meets Radiohead. So like late
Yeah. Yeah.
90s. So I went to the gym this morning and I listened to both. I was like, I know those Radiohead records, but I was not a Third Eye Blind guy. So
Sure.
that's Eric Valentine. So I went and listened to it.
Oh yeah.
It's very contained,
Yep.
which when I heard that stuff in the 90s, I didn't have I didn't have
Totally.
that sense yet, right?
Right.
Um, but it's super contained. And I'm like, oh, I have an idea of how this might have been mic'd because I know
Yep.
Eric does all kinds of weird stuff like
Yeah, man.
but like, the crashes are very delicate. The ride cymbal just comes in real smooth. There's a little
Yep.
bit of ring to the snare, so they're high, but
Yep.
everything's super contained. I'm like,
Yep.
oh, it is actually quite similar to like a Radiohead sound.
Right.
It's more hi-fi.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so so in my mind, I already have an idea of how I want to mic it. I want to mic it a little less, but it's really going to be about the playing,
Yep.
the tuning.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. How often do you ever record drums and cymbals separately?
Quite often. I feel like
Quite
I'm
often, yeah.
doing more and more, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
for the thing I did for Tony last week, I made sure
Yeah.
to do it separately. Again,
Yeah.
just thinking about dialogue.
Totally.
But yeah, more and more.
I know. Yeah, it's funny because I'm actually quite busy these days, like producing like a couple of albums, and so I've been like playing on my own stuff, which feels weird and like almost like sacrilegious in a way. And I've been doing hi-hat and kit and then cymbals separately because you just have more control over them in the mix. And some of the modern pop records that I like that have drums on them, I'm like, man, there's just the mixer has almost too much either these were recorded in an incredible environment or the cymbals, I mean, there's just I love that you can just put them anywhere spatially and you can like you have control over the
Yeah.
EQ of them and the volume of them and the reverb of them and stuff. It's like, yeah.
I love sizzle cymbals, but man, those will ruin a pop track in about 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Because
Totally.
once they're going, and
Yeah.
you know,
My secret actually on that front is I recorded 4 or 5 different sizzle cymbals and I just drag and drop them in. I'm like there's no need to record this again.
okay.
But yeah.
So I have 2 questions I'm waiting to ask you, and you just got there. When do you decide to use samples?
That was my next question to you. I was
Oh,
literally
come
going to
on.
ask you. I swear to God, that was my next thing. Um, yeah, that's a really good question. That's a good question. If I'm playing on someone else's stuff, in a film context, I'm probably not using many samples or samples at all if it's meant to be in a film score idiom. There are cases where I'm playing on pop production-esque things in a film score context. Then I'll like if it's like a song for a movie or it's like the direction of the score is like they maybe t tempt it, meaning like, referenced it with like a pop song. Oh, what if this were actually a score, but it's like a song by Ariana Grande or something like that, where they're kind of going down that rabbit hole of stuff. I'll use samples a little bit, but when it's more like for records, I'm trying to only use samples not out of insecurity of my own sound, but because of what they add. Like I feel like it's really easy to use samples as a crutch. Like, oh, my snare sounds like shit. I'm just gonna throw a sample on there and boom, it sounds amazing. So I'm trying to find that balance of it would genuinely sound better to layer a snare or another kick drum on this rather than getting a better sound. But when I'm producing stuff, I'm using samples a bit. I think it's a little inevitable, 'cause there really is like a sound that people are used to, and a lot of it derives from the Lindrum, or like there's like certain things that have like a subconscious sonic familiarity, I guess. Um, but you know, there the last anecdote I'll give on this actually is I did last year. I played on the new Andrea Bocelli album, which is really cool because it was like both orchestral stuff and like drum set stuff. And the producer Rick Knowles, who's like one of my dear friends and just a freaking legend, he was like, it all happened very. He's like, can you come by the studio like in a few hours? And like, we're not sure like what we want, but just bring your laptop and maybe you can like, do you have timpani samples? Like he wanted to like hear what the session we're doing next week was going to sound like then. And he wanted to hear what it would sound like if we sprung the money to record real percussion on this. And so I programmed some timpani at his place, and then knowing I was going to record live timpani, but then I also like this one song was very like epic and film score esque. It's like a 6/8 like doom ticka ticka cha ticka ticka doom kind of thing. And I was like, I'm gonna have Cartage send my trash can. I have like metal trash cans that I use a lot, and I've got like, Surdos and bass toms and stuff. But there's just this one, the one damage library is the damage, is like it's one of those like everyone's used it a bazillion times, but I know it's got the sound that I know we'll want, and so I programmed it hoping to replace it, but knowing that if it stayed in the mix, I could complement it with the live stuff. And I was right, it actually is in the mix. This one song, Holding On with Gwen Stefani, is like probably about 40% of the groove percussion in the back is the stuff I programmed, and also with the live trash cans and toms and stuff on it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. How about you though? Because I was really curious to know as well.
It's funny because you went right to like more pop stuff, and I was
Yeah.
thinking like I would for you I was thinking like the kind of I mean Hans Zimmer like the
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
where I feel like I can fake it okay.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So to back up, when I'm doing pop records, which is mainly what I do, whatever,
Right.
I never use samples.
Yeah.
Unless I have to program things. This is my favorite thing. Nord. Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Oh yeah, yeah, the Nord drum pad. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, that's
this is
cool.
my favorite thing because it's so manipulative. You can
Yes.
manipulate it and put it through pedals and things like that. As far as my acoustic drums, and my goal is never to use samples. You know,
Right, right,
I feel
right.
like if that goes off to a mixer and they need to do that, cool. But my
Yeah.
job is, I feel like my job is like, hopefully you don't need this.
Yes, yeah, yeah, you could because you're so the like the stuff you're giving is so well recorded. It basically is acting what samples do. Oftentimes samples are just adding more punch or adding more like whatever. Yeah,
I
totally.
hope. I hope.
Yes,
That's
totally.
my goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's where I have to do really over the top things. And that sound, that Hans Zimmer, for lack of a better term, that Hans Zimmer sound
Yeah.
is so weird because it's not a lot of low end, right? It's these huge
Yeah,
drums, but it's very attacky,
totally.
but
Yeah.
there's space around it. You know what
Yep.
I mean? So
I know
that
exactly. Yeah, it's funny like that stuff I kind of I kind of have it somewhat dialed in to get something like that here, knowing that they're going to use samples with it as well. And funny enough, one of the samples that a lot of people are using now is the Spitfire library called Hammers, and that's actually me. That's me hitting the drums. I'm the hitter, and so I kind of came to that project knowing what the film score sound is, and a lot of it is using. You're right. It's mostly, and I have a whole sort of spiel about this because I'd done a project where I had a drum kit made out of truck tires for me,
yeah,
and then like with the intention of it being a film score sound, and then a video of it like Avid Pro Tools was like posting it, and
yep.
everyone's in the comments like, this sounds like shit. This sounds like awful. Like, but like there's a reason why, and I'll
Yes,
go into that in a
exactly.
second. But but a lot of what the film score sound has become is actually putting Nagahide like fake leather on top of the heads to get that bite, but the low end is getting out of the way.
Mhm.
And when I'm recording that kind of stuff here and I'm sort of faking it, I pretty much just have the floor toms with like clear heads right now on them, just tuned all the way down, like non-discernible tone.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I'm just like, and I'm
They
EQing
don't
it in a way
resonate.
where it's all bite. Yeah, exactly. And so, I think a lot of the reasoning behind that sound, I mean, it sounds epic, of course, but um, the thing that I've found with most film scoring engineers and mixers is that, and this is, I mean this with the utmost respect, and this is not targeted towards one person. They cannot get drum sounds. These people come from an orchestral background and an efficiency background of being able to mix 50, 70, 80, 100 pieces of music in a couple week period, and they get a great string sound. It sounds they know what the dub mixer, the person who's combining dialogue, sound effects, and music on what we call a dub stage, what the dub mixer is going to want, and and oftentimes things that have too much resonance, like toms, a lot of mallet percussion instruments, mixers don't really have the understanding of how to properly tame that stuff without overly compressing it, and it winds up just being turned all the way down, whether it's by a mixer who doesn't want to deal with it or doesn't know how to deal with it properly, or the dub mixer will say this is too flubby. It's clashing with other elements in the movie. I kind of have realized that a lot of the the purpose that drums serve in these bigger epic scores is just transient. It's just attack. And so on a movie like the last Transformers movie, where the composer JB came to me and said, I want to feature drum kit on this score. I went, uh-oh, I know that's going to get muted later. And I'm trying to help him on the ground floor develop a way to give the energy of a drum kit, but know that it's going to get turned down. It's like that's just ultimately what's going to happen unless you're
Sound.
like, yeah, exactly. Unless it's like a rock score where they want like that, Tyler Bates is doing a lot of that stuff with Gil Sharon and whatnot, where that's what they want. An epic Hans Zimmer, derived score, drum sets going, boom. So I thought trying to find a drum kit that was made from materials that were naturally dead. Rubber came to mind, of course, but then also like ways to deaden the heads in a more unique way, or like rather than just putting big fat snare drum over it or Naga hide over it. And then I one night had this dream because I'm a freaking nerd that was like different round objects you can make drums out of, and a truck tire was in my dream, and I woke up and was like, oh my God, I Googled tire drum set, and there was this random person in like the farmlands of New Jersey, Chad, who had over the pandemic had started making bass drums out of truck tires, like 36-inch bass drum and I was like, well, shoot. It's
Yeah.
like called him and I was like, do you have you made full drum kits before? He goes, no. And I thought, well, this ain't gonna resonate at all. Like this is just gonna it's basically gonna be drum head sound plus plus. You get a little bit of tone, and it's gonna be a lot of head. But it's gonna be and so I was like, I got them on board with it. And also Transformers and truck tires is also like kind of funny and kitschy, but it's cool.
Right, right.
Um, and it was exactly what I expected. Like you had this 36-inch bass drum 18-wheeler tire that put off an incredible amount of sub. That is one of those things where it's like
Right.
only to be captured in the studio that helps,
Gotta
and
root for that.
yeah, exactly. And then like, it was just meant to act because I also played in the percussion section as well. And so we were basically pairing the drum set stuff with the epic perk that we were recording on like big surdos and like bass toms and taikos and stuff that is just dead, and you get the sound of wood hitting plastic or hitting calfskin or whatever it is. And so yeah, and I know John Chapman, the mixer, added some samples to it to give it a little more vibe. I know at a certain point they wanted it to sound a little more flavored of like the sound of, I think, was it Chicago or Philadelphia or something like that. So there was a little bit of sample placement there, but in terms of just the dryness of things, I think it's very much like not as noticeable as it would have been had it been like a real drum kit that sounds like Fast and Furious 12, which is what they didn't want. So yeah, that's why that drum kit sounds lifeless because it was kind of designed that way. That's unfortunately the place where drums sometimes serve in some of these things. I will say Tony Morales has been a big purveyor for like having good drum sounds. Like I'm not sure what you were working on with him, but doing the Reacher TV show with him is very much like we call it Reacher rock. Like he wants to hear that like that new metal snare drum I have or like the like he's really like he loves drum sounds. He's like, I love that snare drum. Keep this on hand, or let's get a different snare sound from the last thing we did together. Or like I love that and I appreciate that. Like I spend time with him dialing in sounds. I'll come to the session and be like, I tune these toms a certain way. I think you're gonna dig this. Like, and whereas other composers, it's not that heady. It's not that like they're just like, give me drums that I know I'm gonna like, and I go, all right, tune down, tune down, tune down.
Right, right.
You know,
I mean, that's good though. You know. Yeah.
yeah, it's very self-aware.
Does that rubber kit continue to get used because it does that thing?
I have used it. I used it's he found this like go-kart tire in someone else's farm that he just like nabbed. And it's like a I don't know 8 inch or it's like a snare drum. It's got snares on the bottom of it, but I've also turned the snares off. It's all single-headed. That's come in really handy on stuff. It's just like it's got a super thick head on it, so it's like it's not super cracky, but it's really dry. I've used that a bunch, and there's like
Does it take a lot of velocity to get tone from it?
it does, yeah, it does, yeah, 1000%. And but I've got a metal popcorn snare that I use if I don't want that, like, but it sounds it almost sounds programmed. It sounds really dry, but it's high pitched, you know. And then there are a couple of times I've used. There is a project that I would love to use the bass drum on again. It's got to be the right one, that to where you could take advantage of the sub in the mix and it not just be EQ'd out and then it's like just record something else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean it is useful. It wasn't a one trick pony, but it does the one thing.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's so much information that you just said. That's,
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, it's no,
Word
it's
vomit.
great. I love it.
Yeah.
Do you prefer to like we kind of touched on this earlier? Do you prefer to be able to watch picture?
I do. Yeah, I do because I like, I'm first and foremost, I'm a musician, but I'm a big movie fan, big movie buff, big cinephile, and a big a big part of my mental health has always been watching movies, like going to the movie theater, usually by myself. I just zone out and I just get like I want to be transported to this other place.
Mhm.
And so I'm very reactive like that, and I'm very aware of how other people are reacting to those kinds of things. So I like when I get to be reactive, and it's reactive and creative, and also I'm just helping service things a little better for what the composer will want. But I like getting picture because then I can react to what's going on directly in front of me. Some of the most fun projects I've worked on have been like there's one thing I think it was Black Mirror for Netflix, where the composer was like, I'm gonna turn the episode on and just play for the 40 minutes or whatever it was. And I just like it was meant to be like weird Penderecki, like just like sounds of people dying basically is what it was. And I borrowed some kegs from a bar down the street and had to return them afterwards because it's illegal to keep beer kegs, I learned. And it just like they pressed go, and I just was reacting to everything I was seeing, like people getting killed and stuff. And yeah, I love that.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
a fun day or 2 days.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it was fun. It was cool. I don't know if any of it got used, of course. But yeah, it's nice. But then again, sometimes things are too high profile to send over.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't want that. Sometimes people just want you to replay their stuff that they have already like nailed, or there's just like no need. Sometimes it's extra time or whatever.
I
Yeah.
got to do a day at East West for Dave Porter at one point.
Oh, he's amazing.
I bet you've played some of these instruments, but there was probably I think there was like a 72-inch. It was like a head, right?
Yes, like a gong
And I
drum.
just went to different areas and just some of it was samples, some of it was just rhythm.
Yeah.
Like my mind was exploding of like, I mean, it was
Was
just
it like super resonant? Well, Did it come from LA Percussion Rentals? Do you know?
Probably,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And there were
yeah,
like these
yeah,
oil cans and these
yeah.
kind of tuned octobans and like
Oh yeah, they're fun, man. I mean, that's yeah, like the gong drum, like that big gong drum thing is it's like super pingy, right? Like super like yeah,
I mean you could play it with like 1,000 different
anything. Yeah,
palettes, brushes, whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it really, I joke to myself and like my family. I get paid to mess around. Like I just show up and go, here's a weird object. Like I don't know, this might be cool, or like, you know, and also percussion has become really helpful to composers to help sell their ideas because anything is a drum. You know, you know. I've had composers be like, "Oh, my movie is about cars. What kind of used car parts do you have? I want to pitch that to the director of like, you know, sometimes I roll my eyes at it. Sometimes it is actually cool, you know. Like I did a movie with a dear friend Dara Taylor called Strays about like it was like a very irreverent comedy of like talking dogs. And we like went to Petco. She like wanted to go to Petco. And at first I kind of rolled my eyes. But I found these like pooper scoopers, giant pooper scoopers that I still use that like have the coolest clack sound. And it's funny because
Oh,
it's like grabber things.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
the coordination needed to you're like releasing on the downbeat. And so it's like doing like digga digga is like digga digga digga.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty funky.
Be like earlier, later, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I use those. I use it. One second. I use this. You're gonna you're gonna laugh at me. But I use this dog, this like little stuffed animal thing. His name is Bob. It's like a dog toy. Not only does it do this, but it also this I use a lot. It's like one of those
Oh
crumply
yeah.
things.
Oh
So
yeah.
I just like that's really helpful to use
Yeah.
underneath the shaker, and sometimes I'll add like a sound twist tremolator on it to just kind of gate it a little bit. But it's very like unpredictable. The sound you go, what is that?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I was very. Um,
You're,
it's funny. That's yeah.
you're inspiring me because I feel like I haven't bought enough new percussion in the past few years. So
Doesn't have to be expensive. Honestly, some of the
I
things I
know.
get the most use out of cost $3.
Yeah, my some of my favorite things are like, Amazon kids toys or whatever.
Oh yeah, totally. But I have to make it known at some point in this interview that I think when I first became really aware of you, I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, was probably the weirdest call I received in 2020, maybe you as well, from our dear friend Sam Hollander, who's a songwriter and whatnot. It was like he had just moved back to New York from LA, and he called me. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning or something, and I was like, it was like you know, in the heart of COVID, and I woke up. I'm not a morning person. I'm curious if you are, but I woke up to like this phone call from Sam, and I was like, hello, and he was like running. He was like on a jog. He was like, hey man, you want to plan a new Ringo album? And I was like, he's like, Ringo track. And I was like, sure. He's like, great, I'll email you. Bye. Click. And I was like, what the heck just happened? And I went back to sleep and woke up thinking it was a dream because these things like my brain taunts me with these dreams of things that I wish happened but never. I would wake up and go, oh man, I didn't really go on a date with that person. And then I woke up and saw that Sam did call me, and
Uh,
I was like, oh damn. And then I get an email with these Ringo files, and I was like, what the heck? And you were playing drums on it, and I was like, I remember asking him, is that Ringo playing? He goes, no, Blair Sinta. And I was like, sounds killing, and I'm sure you probably have a similar side of the story, but here we are. We played on a Ringo Starr track. Nuts.
um, the call for me was at about 5 p.m. on maybe a Saturday or Sunday, and I was about to leave. Geez, I'm trying to remember. I was about to go on vacation with my family,
Yeah, right.
and I was like, first of all, he texted me. He's like, "Hey man, I got a Ringo track. I need you to play on it." And I was like, and I texted him back. I said, "Ringo Starr? Like,
Yeah, yeah, you're like
like
Ringo
what?
Smith. Ringo, yeah, you're like
Like what?"
yeah, he's like this like killing singer out of Idaho that I'm producing, like
Yeah,
Ringo Jones. You're gonna love him.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so of course I freaked out. I was like, yeah, okay. I was like, I gotta be done by 7 because whatever
Yeah.
reason. And I got it done in like 2 hours. But of course I was like, oh my God, like that story gets a little crazier because I I have a 65 Ludwig kit that, do you know Zach Ray?
Yeah. Oh, I just saw Zach a couple weeks ago. I love that dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was in a band with Zach like years ago, and
No,
um,
he told me about this when I saw him. He played me something from like 20 years ago or something like that, right? Like something a
not that
while
long
ago.
ago, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, yeah.
But we were recording probably the album that you heard, and
Yeah.
he was going to do a session for Ringo. Dave Stewart was producing, and so
Of
Ringo
course.
was coming by the studio, so we cleared the whole studio out, except that particular kit we
No
set
way.
up, and I have like, there's symbols from the 60s and everything. So we set it
Yeah.
up exactly like he has it, and we put it in the corner, and we're like, well, maybe he'll play it. Like, you know,
No way.
so he walks in the room and so I'm sitting in a movie theater the next day, and I just get a text from Zach, and he says, "Your kit now has some vibe." So I guess Ringo walked in the room, he saw it, and he said, "Oh, I used to have a kit just like this." And he sat down, and for about 2 minutes, he just fucked around. And
I
so anyway, I played that kit. I played
Yeah.
that, because I was like, I have to use that. And then, you know,
That's amazing. I have a somewhat similar story. Like I unfortunately didn't grow up with the Beatles. I've come to appreciate them a lot now. But for me, like one of those big like brain blast moments a couple years ago, I got to work on what's now it's kind of an ongoing project with the Killers. They're one of my favorite bands ever,
oh,
and it was a weird thing. I had to go to New York for it, and my mentor being Bernie. I was kind of started teching for Bernie right before he switched to Craviotto, and so I sort of learned all about Craviotto in real time as Bernie was learning more about it. And the two poster children, really the three poster children, even speaking of Zach Ray for Craviotto at the time, were Bernie, Ronnie Vannucci from the Killers, and Jason McGurr from Death Cab. And so, when I got called to do this Killers thing, first of all, I was like, I needed a minute to breathe, but I was like, I need to have a Craviotto kit there. Like, there ain't no way I'm playing some whatever backline kit because if Ronnie's going to be there, it's going to make it that much better. I understand. So and they were down. And it's funny enough, I rented a Craviotto kit from Good Hands, what used to be Steve Maxwell in New York, and it was cheaper to rent the Craviotto kit from Good Hands than the backline kit from SIR or whatever. But
okay.
anyways, the first day I get there, Brandon Flowers was there, but Ronnie wasn't, and I was like, ah, damn. But their manager was there, and he walks up and goes, "Ronnie's got a kit just like that." And I go, "I know, I've been playing Craviotto on and off for a while, like." And he was like, Ronnie didn't really want to come to this thing, because it was like a different state from where they kind of were, like they were kind of playing in like Jersey or something like that. And he was like, "I'm gonna send Ronnie a picture of this kit." And sure enough, when Ronnie saw it, he's like, "I'll be there tomorrow." And so he came because the Craviotto kit was there, and we of course talk shop. And I'm lucky to like, we still keep in touch, and he's amazing. But I like kind of like you, like he saw that kit and was like, "I have a kit just like that," or like, "You get it," or Craviotto, like this guy, it's not just some random Broadway guy playing like a thing. So
Yeah,
that was kind of my similar moment.
cool. That's
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. How are you? My last question for you is this: is an honest question. How do you find work-life balance? Like, because you have a family, I just have gear, and you're very busy all the time. And so, do you work banker's hours? Are you working at night sometimes? Like, I'm curious what that looks like for you.
So I built this. I moved in here in 2009 in this
Yeah.
house, and I built this out. And my main goal was I was about to have my first kid, and I
Oh,
had no idea if I was going to have to work at 2 in the morning or what. So I soundproof
yeah.
the shit out of this. I can be in here at 2 in the morning, and I could wail,
Wow.
and it would be fine.
Is it room within a room kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah.
See, that's the way to do it. Yeah.
That was my main goal of like I cannot have neighbor problems because I don't know. Uh,
Yeah.
that being said, I have been out here at 5 in the morning mainly because I had to do something overseas, like for
Yeah.
something for Japan or Taiwan or something.
Yeah.
Um, at this point, I don't work late just because I'm
Yeah.
old now.
Yeah. You don't have to. Why?
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I just really try. When people are like, "Hey, when are you going to work?" I'm usually like, "I'm going to start at like 10 or 10:30."
Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
and I just try to do it like that, and I just have obligations with my kids where
Yep.
baseball and whatever. So I'm just
Priority. Yeah.
trying to fit it in. And then if I have to pause and then come out here at 7, you know,
Yep.
um, it's interesting. I've been forced into that just ever since I had kids. It's like it kind of
Yeah.
has to be a day job.
Yep. Totally. I mean, it's much healthier that way. I mean, I'm now figuring that out, like, as someone who's just been young and single for the last like ever. I was juggling all these different things, and the in the composing and orchestrating world, the um the timelines are crazy. I mean, I was pulling all-nighters all the time, and I don't own this house, so hence like the Craigslist special sound design, sound paneling going on. I'm kind of waiting to actually do it for real. Man, these U-Haul packing
Working.
blankets have been
Yeah,
the
man,
workhorses of the studio.
working.
Uh, but yeah, and so I have recorded drums. I'm so lucky. I've recorded drums in this house at every hour of the day you can imagine. 3:56 a.m. I've played. I don't take pride in that anymore. I've now the last couple years since 2024, I've now really just been. It's been a priority of me to really kind of cut it off and not take on so much to where I'm having to pull the crazy all-nighter stuff. But it is like everyone does have a way. Sometimes your family makes you do that, and other times you have ways to shut things off, or whatever. I'm always curious how people who are just working freelance, busy, sort of manage that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
I'm definitely less what's the word? I'm just
Rigid?
way more
Or
tame about it mentally than
yeah,
I
right.
used to be. I don't want to say drive because I'm still really driven, but
Yeah.
I'm
No, I
just
mean,
I'm just
you
more
kind of
manageable,
yeah,
now.
totally. Yeah, it's great. I mean, and oftentimes, sometimes when someone goes, "How soon can you do this?" I go, "When do you need it by?" And sometimes that saves me from
Yeah.
starting at 10 p.m. and I could just hit it early and get it to them by lunch or whatever. Like sometimes just asking that and try not to come off as like, "Well, when do you need it?" It come off more like, "Well, like when do you need it?" And I'll get it done like whenever. And if they go, "Oh, I wanted it tonight, but if you want to get it done in the morning, that's totally cool." Great. Instead of being like, "Yep, I'm on it. I'm gonna uproot my dinner plans and I'll be up all night doing this thing or whatever."
Sometimes giving them a time frame of like, hey, is it cool if I'm
Yes,
doing this? I have this going on. Is it cool if I start tomorrow morning? Blah blah blah. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, it's good to hear. I like these are things like mental health and money are things that should be talked about more because they're things that I think we all are like internally struggling with, and like there's not as much of an outlet as to like how much do things actually cost? How we sort of keep a standard for things, or like how are you dealing with this? Like or
Especially
like
when we're engineering and
yeah,
running a studio and drumming and sending files.
yes,
It's like, yeah,
totally.
yeah.
It's yeah. There's just so much. Yeah, I think keeping the conversation open, and I always like knowing how other people kind of do things and manage things because we're not alone in, in this, even though we are alone physically.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thanks for your time.
No, oh my God. I feel like I mean I could talk to you for another 4 hours. I mean,
Yeah.
which we should.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm thank you so much for having me on this. Yeah,
Of
it's like
course, man.
nice to it's nice to get to chat and talk shop and hear about how you do things and just yeah, be in good company and yeah, always down to talk about stuff.
Well, I think similar to you, I learned about you, relatively recently, and I
Yeah.
was like, where the fuck did this dude come from? Like, what's happening? You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
awesome. And then to go through like your Instagram and see you like playing in a stadium and just fucking bashing, and I'm like, oh wow, this guy has like
I love yeah.
huge fan.
I can also play soft. I know some like for a minute I
Well, of
was
course
like
you can. I'm saying that because
no, of course no,
you
it's
see the film in like a contained film
yeah.
person, but then you have that other
Total,
side.
no, same. I was saying that almost as a joke because for a while, I just kind of was branded within my circles as the guy who can go ape shit and can also read music.
Yeah,
Because the people who go ape shit usually can't read music, and the
right.
people who can read music usually can't go ape shit. And so then it became like almost like a joke. Like, I would do a take of something nuts, and people would go. Oh yeah, that's the Hal Rosenfeld pianissimo, and I go, I can play soft too.
That's the perfect note to leave this on. Fucking A.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my God.
Okay. Right on.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. Let's
This is
hang.
a
I'll
blast.
hit you up.
I love that. Yeah, I'm around, and I'm always, even though I live over here, I'm always on the east side. I'm actually going to be in Los Feliz later today, so I'm always around. So whenever.
All right, dude. Right on.
Sick. All right. See you, man.
Thanks, Hal. See you, man.
Bye.